To double down on this, and this may be for you, Minister Padarath. Since you mentioned that your thrust to restructure WASA could save the nation about $30 million, and a lot of people are watching, and I've gotten a few messages from WASA workers who are right now fearful that their jobs are in jeopardy. I understand what you would have told Kishan earlier, but have you possibly identified which category of workers will be targeted, and if not, when? What will you say firstly to those people right now who are worried about their jobs, and how soon will they get some clarity in terms of who will be going home if possible?
Last 24 hours, significant statements have been made by both the Minister of Public Utilities and the Prime Minister regarding WASA and the transformation plan that had been in place in the organization. This press conference has been called for MP Gonzales in his capacity as the former Minister of Public Utilities to address those matters, any misconceptions and misinformation in the public domain. Just a note that Mr. and MP Gonzales, he might have to get accustomed to that, will be addressing this issue. We will be taking questions afterwards on this issue.
Good afternoon, members of the media. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I want to thank you very much for coming to this press conference that was called to respond to some of the tissues of lies that the country witnessed yesterday at our post-cabinet news conference that was chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister, supported by her Minister of Public Utilities and other members of the cabinet. I must say, however, from the start, that looking at that press conference that was chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister, it was very disheartening, it was very unfortunate, it was unbecoming of the Minister of Public Utilities as well as the Honorable Prime Minister. It was a charade, it was a party show that the country witnessed yesterday. And if that is what is going to pass for governance in Trinidad and Tobago, I must say then God help us. God help us. Because at the end of the day, an election platform, an election has come and an election has gone. It is now time to get down to the governance of the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, ministers of government, led by a prime minister, must conduct themselves befitting of the office for which they were elected to. And what we saw yesterday was a dark period for Trinidad and Tobago where governance is concerned. And I would want to start this news conference by advising the Honorable Prime Minister that she needs to get down to her job. She needs to understand the seriousness of the office that she holds, and she needs to set an example, not only for her cabinet ministers, but for all citizens of goodwill in Trinidad and Tobago. Because at the end of the day, that is what is required. That is what is required. Ladies and gentlemen, when the previous government was elected in 2020, in our election campaign, we campaigned on the issue of water supply in Trinidad and Tobago and the operations of the Water and Sewerage Authority. The PNM government won the elections in 2020, and immediately in our first cabinet meeting, the former Prime Minister, the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, put together a subcommittee of cabinet, and that subcommittee of cabinet comprised of, let me call the names, chaired by the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, as he was then Minister of Public Utilities, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, Minister of Planning and Development, the Honorable Stuart Young, MP, Minister of National Security, and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, the Honorable Penelope Beckles, MP, Minister of Housing and Urban Development. The Prime Minister, in putting together this Cabinet subcommittee, asked the Cabinet subcommittee to look into the operations of the Water and Sewerage Authority. And he mandated the committee to take 3 months and to report to the Cabinet on its findings. The report was handed into the Cabinet it's dated December the 11th, but it was handed to the Cabinet early in January 2021. And this is a copy of the report that was handed to the Cabinet. A report of the Cabinet subcommittee appointed to review the operations of the Water and Sewerage Authority and to determine a strategy for enabling the authority to achieve its mandate. In the opening paragraph of that report, in the executive summary, please allow me to quote some of the findings of that report. Over time, WASA has become an unwieldy, overstaffed, unproductive, unresponsive organization that has deteriorated and is no longer efficiently serving the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. In numerous instances and over many decades, efficiency was sacrificed for, inter alia, political patronage and management accountability exchanged for industrial stability, resulting in an organization in which there is little correlation between the contents of collective agreements and the realities of providing a reliable service to the national population at an affordable and acceptable cost to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. The subcommittee has concluded that the dysfunctions inherent in WASA are so deeply entrenched that in its current form, the organization is incapable of effectively satisfying its customers' demands and the state's mandate. Continuation of the current WASA model will therefore generate further decline and exacerbate the downward spiral in all aspects of the authority's operation. I've just decided to quote these 2 paragraphs to the citizens and for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. When this report was handed into the Cabinet, a number of recommendations were made for the transformation and or the restructuring of the Water and Sewerage Authority. A number of recommendations were made. What did the government do upon receiving this report? The Prime Minister and the Cabinet instructed the Minister of Public Utilities to lay this report in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, because the Prime Minister rightly believed that the findings of this report should be the concern and the business of every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. It was not hidden. It was not placed in a drawer. It was not placed in some area where the government may have some sinister motive where WASA is concerned. This report, ladies and gentlemen, was laid in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. I think it was in February 2021, shortly after the Cabinet received a copy of this report from the then Minister of Public Utilities. The report was laid, and every citizen, if you go on the Parliament's website, it is there for every citizen to see. And the report was referred to a joint select committee of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago for further examination. A joint select committee on land and physical infrastructure. And that report was further interrogated by this joint select committee of the Parliament. Who were the members of that joint select committee? I checked the parliamentary website, and that committee comprised of Mr. Diurop Timur, who was the independent senator. For Point Fortin, Mr. Barry Padarath, MP for Princestown. Mrs. Lisa Morris Julian, deceased, the then MP for W. O'Meara. Mr. Simon Dino Brigger, the MP for Diego Martin Central. Mrs. Renuka Sagram Singh Suklail, who was a senator, government senator. Mr. Arnold Roberts, a senator in the opposition. And Mr. Yunus Ibrahim, a senator, government senator. And these senators and members of parliament interrogated the recommendations of this report. What did they do? After looking at the report and its recommendation for the transformation of WASA, the findings of that Joint Select Committee said that WASA's restructuring transformation plan has been approved. It has noted that it has been approved by Cabinet, and it made further recommendation. This is what the committee, this Joint Select Committee, recommended. We recommend that the restructuring and or the transformation plan for WASA be forwarded to the committee for its consideration before its implementation. This is one of the major recommendations of that Joint Select Committee, which comprised of none other than Mr. Barry Padarath, as he was then a member of Parliament for Princestown, who is now the Minister of Public Utilities, and who witnessed a charade yesterday, a party's show at the post-cabinet news conference, where the report that was laid and the transformation plan that was published for all and sundry to see. This Joint Select Committee that he was a member of recommended the implementation of this transformation plan.
For 10 years, the PNM spoke about transforming the water sector. And after 10 years, the water situation in Trinidad and Tobago did not get better, it got worse. When we left office in 2015, Trinidad and Tobago had a 24/7 supply of water. 74% of the country had a 24/7 supply of water. At a Joint Select Committee in February of 2023, WASA admitted to that Joint Select Committee that at that time, Trinidad and Tobago was receiving a 24/7 supply of water, with only 16% of the country receiving that supply. So in 2015, we moved from 74% under then the Kamla Persad-Bissessar administration during that period, and then they took us 2025 to where we are prior to last month, April, where we started the work. When we came in, it was roughly around 20-25%. We have taken immediate steps to attempt to ensure that water production and water distribution levels have increased. One of the areas, and the Prime Minister spoke about it earlier, has to do with the management structure of WASA. The Prime Minister told us that $30 million would be saved by the state in terms of changing our management structure. And that will not be a permanent situation, because we will look to see how we improve the situation of WASA, particularly with respect to the management, the day-to-day functions and activities with respect to the mandate of the board. Right now in WASA, there's a heavy management structure that we met, with 34 executive positions totaling over $70 million. There was a focus on big jobs for the boys and girls in the PNM inside of WASA, and we will speak more about that. Ballooning a figure of over $70 million, where people in this country continue to suffer. Large swaths of the country, particularly South, Central, and East Trinidad in particular. It cannot be that there are parts of this country that receives a 24/7 supply of water day on day, and then there are parts of the country that receive none at all, sometimes amounting to months. And that has been the case for several areas throughout Trinidad and Tobago that I've identified to you in South Central and East Trinidad. The former administration, they received an IDB loan of $200 million US. This is cash in hand that they have had for the past 4 years. So it is not a matter of the resources to fix the infrastructure issues as it relates to production and distribution. It was a matter of political will, as identified by the Prime Minister earlier.
Prime Minister, good evening. Akash Samaru, Guardian Media. I want to go to the WASA issue. Just for clarity's sake, what did you tear up there? Was that the former government's transformation plan?
Yes, that was the transformation plan of the former government, which we had pledged that we would rescind. So it was rescinded. Barry, you want to join us if there's any more on the WASA? Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Akash.
Yeah, I remember the former Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzales. He had identified as well that WASA was top-heavy. In fact, I remember part of the former administration's transformation plan was to cut managers by about 50%, bringing it from about 4-something down to 2-something. So again, just for clarity's sake, what is it that you all are doing differently here?
When the report was laid in the Parliament, the Cabinet decided that another subcommittee of the Cabinet should be put together to examine the recommendations of that report. And that Cabinet subcommittee was chaired by the Honorable Penelope Beckers-Robinson. It also comprised of Mr. Simon Dino Brigger, Mrs. Camille Robinson-Regis. I also was a member of that committee that looked and examined at the recommendations that were made in the 2020, should I call it the Gonzales Committee report. And the committee, in looking at these recommendations, decided, because the government did not accept all of the recommendations of the 2021 report. The government noted these recommendations, thought that it was important that the document be made a public document, especially given the findings of that report. But the government thought that it was prudent to put together another subcommittee of the Cabinet to examine these recommendations and to make further recommendations to the Cabinet to determine what are some of the plans and the programs and the recommendations that could be implemented to improve WASA's operation so that it can deliver upon its mandate. The Beckers Committee made further recommendations to the Cabinet. It examined the report, and it took a couple of months, perhaps close to a year, for a list of further recommendations to be made. And in these recommendations, the Beckers Committee recommended to the Cabinet that the restructuring of WASA should commence at the management level, because the 2021 Cabinet Subcommittee report identified that WASA had an executive or a management level that comprised of over 10 levels, totaling over 422 managers, which included executive management. So you had about 8 or 10 executive managers, but you had managers going all the way down from range 60 to 58, etc., which included 58, 60, yeah, to 68, which comprised of persons who were members of the bargaining unit of the recognized unions.
WASA issue. Just for clarity's sake, what did you tear up there? Was that the former government's transformation plan?
Yes, that was the transformation plan of the former government, which we had pledged that we would rescind. So it was rescinded. Barry, you want to join us if there's any more on the WASA? Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Akash.
Yeah, I remember the former Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzales. He had identified as well that WASA was top-heavy. In fact, I remember part of the former administration's transformation plan was to cut managers by about 50%, bringing it from about 4-something down to 2-something. So again, just for clarity's sake, what is it that you all are doing differently here?
People's National Movement.
So no more layoffs. We could quote you on that. That's it, right?
It only impacts on the select big boys and girls that were brought in, the 34 of them, that were brought in that rode the backs of WASA workers.
Top heavy. Okay, guys.
The Beckles Committee recommended that a new management structure should be implemented in WASA and that the transformation of the organization should commence at the leadership of the organization. Because one of the things that we detected in our report was that the previous management structure of WASA never received cabinet approval. There was absolutely no cabinet approval for the previous management structure of WASA. The terms and conditions of these managers were never approved by the Chief Personnel Office, and it was never approved by the cabinet. And therefore, we thought that it was necessary to correct this situation because it was unsustainable. And if we were to move on with the transformation of WASA, we should have a management structure that was approved by the cabinet with salaries approved by the Chief Personnel Officer as we move deeper into the restructuring process. Ladies and gentlemen, the structure that was approved by the previous government was a structure that reduced the management of the authority from 422 managers to about 40% of that, 200 and something managers. That was the structure that was approved, with executive leadership of about 8 to 10 persons, which of course included the CEO and directors of water management services, assistant directors, etc., team leads and what have you. And that is where the transformation started. All of us would be aware that these positions were placed in the national newspapers. They were fully advertised locally, regionally, and internationally. It was a fast search to get persons who were equipped, who were qualified to take on the business of managing the Water and Sewerage Authority. And that is how we ended up with a CEO in office from Barbados. A number of persons locally, regionally, and internationally applied for these jobs. Persons within the organization, employees within the organizations also applied for the positions that were advertised. And many of the managers came from within the organization, the CEO came from outside, and there were a couple of other positions that came from outside. But most of the executive managers within the authority at this point in time came from within the Water and Sewerage Authority. Most of them. So I heard the minister talking about with the cancellation of this restructuring plan, it will save the authority some $30 million or so. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. And the purpose of this conference, this news conference, is to debunk some of the lies that were told, the tissues of lies that were told to the population yesterday. And I can tell you that with the filling of key executive positions within the authority, it would cost the taxpayers of this country a monthly cost of $2 million and an annual cost of $24 million. I want you to listen carefully. An annual cost. With the previous executive positions that this new structure replaced, which included a CEO, directors, heads, senior managers, etc., 40 persons, compared to 38 persons in this new management level. Listen carefully. There was a monthly cost of $2 million and an annual cost of $24 million. No difference from what is approved now compared to what was in operation at the executive level that was replaced. The savings, however, would have come with the restructuring or the transformation at range 60 to 68, where the plan was to move from managers of 382 to 208, from 422 managers to 246 managers. That was where the savings was supposed to be achieved. It was not at the executive level. The savings was supposed to be achieved deeper down as you go into the bargaining units where the Water and Sewage Authority and the executive management and the board had to enter into negotiations and consultation with the recognized unions representing WASA workers. And ladies and gentlemen, with the truncation or the reduction of a management level from 422 persons to 246 persons, the cost savings after the full execution and implementation of the executive restructuring and or transformation would have resulted in savings of over $43 million to the authority annually. $43 million annually. And that is what was ripped up yesterday by the Honorable Prime Minister.
PSA, former PG, Mr. Batiste is our minister, and of course, Felicia and her team. They stood with us, and I want to congratulate them. I said earlier before you came in, to congratulate the PSA for standing their ground. They never gave in, they never gave up. And today, my government is very proud to have worked with you, and today I give you this. I told I'll put it in the dustbin. Today I give you this. We will scrap it. We have rescinded it. And you told me when we talked, you said throw it in the dustbin. So I don't have a dustbin. So can we forward? So I'll give you.
And she lied and gave the impression that by cancelling this transformation plan, by revoking the appointment and the cancellation of these contractual employment contracts that we entered into with executive management will somehow save the authority $30 million. Then who is going to lead the authority? That's the question. Who is going to lead the authority? Because if you are reverting...
One of the areas, and the Prime Minister spoke about it earlier, has to do with the management structure of WASA. The Prime Minister told us that $30 million would be saved by the state in terms of changing our management structure. And that will not be a permanent situation, because we will look to see how we improve the situation of WASA, particularly with respect to the management, the day-to-day functions and activities with respect to the mandate of the board.
If you are reverting, as they said, to the old leadership or management structure which was never approved by cabinet, with salaries that were never approved by the CPU, if you are reverting to that, then you are increasing the cost of the management of the authority. You are increasing the cost, contrary to what we were planning to do at the PNM government, which was to reduce costs by $43 million. $43 million. Because we were moving away from a management structure of 422 persons to a management structure of 246 persons. It is very disheartening that the Honorable Prime Minister would stand before the people of Trinidad and Tobago and conduct herself in the way that she conducted herself and led a tissue of lies to give the impression that what she did by ripping up the transformation plan would somehow save the taxpayers of this country. Nothing is further from the truth. Absolutely nothing is further from the truth. And I want to tell you that it is the same government of Kamla Persad-Bissessar between the years 2010 to 2015 went to the IADB for a loan to undertake some capital projects for the Water and Sewage Authority and for the restructuring of the Water and Sewage Authority. And it is that government of Kamla Persad-Bissessar who told the IADB that the Water and Sewage Authority, with the objective of meeting the goals of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in a 2012 and 2013 document sent by the then board and the then Minister of Public Utilities, who was Mr. Ganga Singh, to the IADB. And this is what the document said. WASA, with the objective of meeting the goals of the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the water and sanitation sector, is beginning a 5-year capital investment program to improve its efficiency and effectiveness. WASA plans to invest more than $1.5 billion to develop and rehabilitate assets. It will complement these investments with other reforms, such as the restructuring of the Water and Sewage Authority. So they gave an undertaking to the IADB that WASA requires restructuring. And this is what the document said. The following factors were considered as critical in establishing the restructuring plan: the forecasted manpower requirements based on corporate objectives, organizational demands and challenges, the need for WASA to achieve a state of viability and financial stability in the shortest possible time, and the urgent requirement to achieve a reduction in the number of employees per 1,000 connection. That is a movement from the current ratio of 13.4 to 7.0. And the document proposed a reduction in staff by 2,500 employees. 2,500 employees, ladies and gentlemen. And it is on that basis that WASA and the government led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar got access to an IDB loan, engaged in a visa program where 900 staff members of WASA participated in a visa program, 900, that was supposed to reduce the staff complement of 5,000 by 1,500 or 1,000. And 900 of these employees participated in a visa program with a plan to reduce the staff complement by 2,500 employees. By 2015, the government got access to $400 million. The then government, the UNC government, got access to $400 million, engaged in a visa program which was a massive fraud, a massive visa fraud led by the government of Kamla Persad-Bissessar, where 900 employees participated in this visa program. And by 2015, as opposed to having a staff reduction by 900, by 2015, the staff complement returned to 5,000 employees. 5,000 employees. And the plan to reduce the workforce by the authority by 2,500, as they promised the IDB, never materialized. Never materialized. But it is documented evidence that the plan by the UNC was to reduce the staff by 2,500 employees. You compare that with the plan by the PNM government, which identified the issue as that of management and indicated in our plans that we will truncate and or reduce the management of WASA by about 40 to 50%. And it is this new management structure approved by cabinet with salaries approved by the CPU that will result in cost savings of $43 million annually. It is that new executive leadership that will be responsible for the transformation of the organization where it is needed. Ladies and gentlemen, when you look at the conduct of the Honorable Prime Minister and her Minister of Public Utilities yesterday, you have to ask yourself whether they are aware of their past conduct or they believe that the people of Trinidad and Tobago are so foolish and they are so gullible that we will not remember the dark days of when they led the country between 2010 and 2015, where they went into the Water and Sewage Authority and there was corruption after corruption, mismanagement after mismanagement, VSEP fraud after VSEP fraud. And these are the people today that will come before you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to rip apart a transformation plan that was put together not only by a team of cabinet ministers, that was put together and supported by people within the authority, by senior public officials of the Ministry of Public Utilities, by stakeholders in the water sector, all over Trinidad and Tobago, making their recommendation and putting forward a roadmap of transformation so that we can have an authority that we can all be proud of to provide the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with a safe and reliable supply of water. In addition to this transformation plan, the plan identified a number of capital projects to be implemented to improve the supply of water for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It was a well-studied and a comprehensive document that not only talked about the transformation of the Water and Sewage Authority, but it identified a number of capital projects with linkages to financial institutions, the IADB, CAF, etc., to get access to funding so that we can engage in some of these capital projects to improve the supply of water. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the documents that were published over the years. A National Integrated Water Resource Management Policy, 2022, to not only deal with the issue of WASA and its ability to provide and to supply the people of Trinidad and Tobago with a reliable supply of water, but a governance document to look at the whole institutional arrangement and the arrangement for the water sector in Trinidad and Tobago, dealing with other sectors that impact upon WASA's ability to provide a supply of water. This document is also a public document that should be read by all citizens of this country. We put together a strategic action plan for the supply and the improvement of water to the population, January 2022. So in addition to the report of 2021, there was a strategic action plan to provide the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with a reliable supply of water, an action plan that was approved and sanctioned by the IDB. And most importantly, by the end of 2024, going into 2025, we published a document that showed the successful completion of over 200 capital projects all over Trinidad and Tobago that resulted in an improvement in the supply of water to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Over 51 projects under the public sector investment program were successfully implemented. We initiated the Northwest Water Improvement Program that saw an improvement in the supply of water to people in Northwest Trinidad from Chaguaramas to Mondor and in St. Joseph. We've successfully implemented the Tobago Water Improvement Program that saw, for the very first time ever after it was spoken to in the national space for 25 years, the drilling of wells, the replacement of aged infrastructure, and the successful desilting of the Hillsborough Dam to improve its capacity. Over 20 or 25 capital projects were implemented and completed. We started the Southwest Water Improvement Program that saw a significant improvement in the supply of water to the people of Point Fortin and the people of La Brea, where we drilled a number of wells in Granville, in Carapal, that saw a complete turnaround in the supply of water to over 50,000 citizens. Because we recognize, ladies and gentlemen, that whilst we undertake the very comprehensive exercise of transforming the Water and Sewage Authority, which would take a lot of time, that we needed to engage in these projects so that citizens can get relief for water wherever they are. In addition to that, our community water improvement program saw the successful completion of projects, over 100 projects all over Trinidad and Tobago, with communities getting water for the very first time in central Trinidad, in Tobago, in North Trinidad, as well as in South Trinidad. All of these projects were successfully completed. Over 200 of these projects successfully completed in record time, no cost overruns, no allegations of corruption. You compare that to what transpired in 2010 and 2015, I have to say that the UNC under Kamla Persad-Bissessar has no moral authority to speak on any issue in the water sector. And what they have done yesterday is a retrograde step, is a step to pander to the union who collaborated with them in the election exercise, and it was payback to the union to the detriment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You would recall that in Mount Diablo, it was Marvin Gonzales, MP for Aruca Lopino, who was serving as Minister of Public Utilities, go into Mount Diablo, the heart of Siparia, and rescued over 5,000 citizens who were victims of a major water trucking racket. 5,000 citizens are victims of a major water trucking racket. We executed a project there, and we delivered these people, and we rescued them from that water trucking racket. And it happened for over 15 or 20 years, right under the nose of the Honorable Prime Minister. And she did not do anything whatsoever. So when they boast that under their tenure, in 2010 to 2015, that they accomplished 74% of the population getting 24/7 level of service, I can tell you it is a monstrous lie. There is no evidence whatsoever in the Water and Sewage Authority which suggests that the UNC accomplished 74% to 74% of the population 24/7 supply of water. Nothing is further from the truth. It is an absolute lie, and they keep repeating it, hoping that you will accept it as fact one day. But I can tell you, there was never in Trinidad and Tobago, under any government, 74% of the population getting 24/7 level of service. But I can tell you that in 2020, when we started these projects, only 31% of the population received a 24/7 level of service. And because of the successful implementation of these capital projects that I've told you, well documented in these publications, we moved the level of service, 24/7 level of service, from 31% to 61%, ladies and gentlemen, to 61%. It never happened in this country, in the history of this country. And again, she talked about that under the PNM, Barry Padarath also said it, and he mentioned it over and over again, that it was only 16%. That error was made by a simple statement by an executive of WASA appearing before a joint select committee. And when the error was made, it was only pointing to 1 month when there was a lot of disruption in the system. And immediately after that joint select committee hearing, WASA issued a statement correcting this particular matter and said that the executive who made the statement, his intention was never to say that 16% of the population received a 24/7 level of service, and that was corrected the day after. Yesterday, I heard the Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Utilities saying that under the PNM, only 16% of the population received a 24/7 level of service. Nothing is further from the truth. They are all diabolical liars who intend to lie to the population every day, to condition our minds to believe their lies and their untruths and their fabrication. But I want to warn Barry Padarath that you have started on the wrong foot. You are behaving like a Wajan. You are behaving in a manner that is unfit for public office. And you should settle down and conduct yourself as a minister in the government of Trinidad and Tobago, because governance is not about bacchanal, it is not about mahima, it is not about janjat, it is not behaving like a wajang every single day. You need to sit quietly, listen to your advisors, and conduct yourself in an honorable way, because our citizens deserve better. Our citizens deserve better. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that the scrapping of that WASA transformation plan yesterday is going to impact all of us. It has sacrificed the authority once more on the altar of political patronage, and by so doing, the strides that we have made to improve the level of service to all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, wherever you are, we are going back and back again, where corruption will reign in the authority once more. And there will be no peace in this country. And there will be no hope for innocent citizens, for communities. All they want is asking for a reliable supply of water. I have heard the Prime Minister saying that since her government came into power, there has already been an improvement in the supply of water for 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, there's already been an improvement in the supply of water. Honorable Prime Minister, I wish to tell you that for the last 4 and 5 years, the work that was done by the PNM government to improve the supply of water has been an ongoing process. And what you have inherited when you came into government on the 28th or the 29th of April is a well-oiled machinery delivering water to many communities all over Trinidad and Tobago, with capital projects well underway, with wells being drilled all over the country, with major water refurbishment plants and water plants being refurbished all over Trinidad and Tobago. And all you are kindly asked to do is to continue with what has already been done to provide the people of Trinidad and Tobago with a supply of water. In the Penal area, the Plock Road area, I kicked off a project with a major pipeline to improve the supply of water to the people of Plock Road. I am advised that this project is almost over. And once it is completed, costing the taxpayers of this country over $25 million in the heart of UNC constituency or UNC constituencies, I am asking that this project be completed so that the people of Plock Road and San Francisco and all surrounding communities can once again see an improvement in their supply of water. The work that we have done with respect to digitization, the Operational Control Center, creating a smart water grid so that managers can respond to emergencies almost in real time. All of that was done as part of the transformation process. The app to be rolled out where citizens can have access directly to the authority, where they can communicate directly to the authority on matters impacting their supply of water, is ready to be rolled out. I am asking you, please allow it to continue, because the citizens of this country deserve better. Scrapping a plan that has already seen an improvement in the supply of water to so many communities over Trinidad and Tobago. Digitization, automation, the restructuring of some of the internal processes in the organization to ensure that we have an improved level of service. We are asking you to allow it to continue, and do not sacrifice the progress that we have made because you have entered into some secret pact with the Public Services Association, a secret pact that has nothing to do with an improvement in the supply of water to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, but that which serves your narrow political interests to get access to power so that you can plunder the resources of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I am asking you, Madam Prime Minister, and your Minister of Public Utilities to settle down. The charade, the bacchanal, the confusion, the janjat, the lies, the fabrication. We will expose every one of you. And as you lie to this population, this PNM opposition will take every opportunity to respond to you almost in real time. And finally, I want to advise the Honorable Minister of Public Utilities that the loan that the government of Trinidad and Tobago signed with the IADB is a loan for $80 million US. So when you lie and you tell the population that there's a loan and we have sitting in the bank $200 million, obviously you are not doing your work and you're not reading. The loan that the ministry signed and the government signed was for $80 million.
The former administration, they received an IDB loan of $200 million US. This is cash in hand that they have had for the past 4 years. So it is not a matter of the resources to fix the infrastructure issues as it relates to production and distribution. It was a matter of political will, as identified by the Prime Minister earlier.
With a condition that once these projects and the projects that were identified and approved have reached a certain stage of maturity and or completion, further negotiation will be entered into with the IDB for access to the remainder of the resources. Before the previous government left office, and because of the successful implementation and management of this IDB loan, this first tranche of $80 million, which was supposed to be done within 10-year period, was completed in record time, almost in 2 years. And because of that, we are now at a cusp and at a stage where we can enter into negotiations with the IDB to get additional resources so that we can continue to roll out our capital projects to improve the supply of water. Mr. Minister of Public Utilities, it is not true when you told the country that we have $200 million US sitting in an account and not doing anything. Please do not lie to the population. You cannot govern a country with lies and fabrications. Settle down, understand your work, and communicate truthfully to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
The former administration, they received an IDB loan of $200 million US. This is cash in hand that they have had for the past 4 years. So it is not a matter of the resources to fix the infrastructure issues as it relates to production and distribution. It was a matter of political will, as identified by the Prime Minister earlier.
Right.
Prime Minister, good evening. Akash Samaru, Guardian Media.
Yeah.
I want to go to the WASA issue. Just for clarity's sake, what did you tear up there? Was that the former government's transformation plan?
Yes, that was the transformation plan of the former government, which we had pledged that we would rescind. So it was rescinded. Barry, you want to join us if there's any more on the WASA? Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Akash.
Yeah, I remember the former Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzales. He had identified as well that WASA was top-heavy. In fact, I remember part of the former administration's transformation plan was to cut managers by about 50%, bringing it from about 4-something down to 2-something. So again, just for clarity's sake, what is it that you all are doing differently here?
PSA, former PG, Mr. Bissessar, our minister, and of course, Felicia and her team. They stood with us, and I want to congratulate them. I said earlier before you came in, to congratulate the PSA for standing their ground. They never gave in, they never gave up. And today, my government is very proud to have worked with you, and today I give you this. I told I'll put it in the dustbin. Today I give you this. We will scrap it. We have rescinded it. And you told me when we talked, you said throw it in the dustbin. So I don't have a dustbin. So can we forward? So I'll give you.